Good day, Observation Deck viewers. In today's episode, I want to explore why the judge, in some cases where you stand your ground, leaves the court and then returns. Some may already know, but many, I suspect, have the wrong idea about this and get themselves into hot water because we're not told what is actually happening, and more importantly, what your response should be. The rule of three is everywhere you look, not just in law, but in other aspects of our lives, well, in many of them. And you would do well to fully comprehend why 3 is the magic number and not just in law. So with that being said, I'll see you on the other side. Hi and welcome to this edition of the Observation Deck. Firstly, I think I made a rod for my own back here when I announced the publication of my definitive guide to council tax. To fully understand why I say definitive is because I am digging deeper than most in the fight for justice when it comes to council tax. I'm also giving you a strategy that removes the local council's ability to abuse the court system against you and citing what some may think are laws which no longer apply, and yet if invoked they most certainly do. And obviously how to bypass the magistrates' courts where most of the bullshit takes place, leaving the local council without their normal corrupted system available to them to nail you. So I apologise to all those who have sent me emails and messages as to when it will be completed, as I want to get this correct right from the start. So please be patient, since I have many other claims, calls and projects on the go at the same time, and I don't want to mess up any of them, including the council tax. So hopefully by month's end I will be announcing the publication of my latest efforts to help fight the system, using the system against itself. Now, with that being said, let's jump into this episode's main course. So imagine you have been called into the kangaroo court they call the magistrates on some administrative claim made against you. In fact, it's not necessarily the magistrates I'm referring to here, but sitting judges, which obviously could appear in any level of courts, whether it be magistrates, county, crown, chancery or whatever. If you have listened to my channel for a while, you'll know that there are several ways to deal with this particular situation without actually having to deal with the claim first. Never deal with the claim first, always deal with jurisdiction. It is important for these admin clerks to get you to allow them jurisdiction over you by any agreement or means that they can. Now, I'm not going to go into too many details, since most of you already know that they can pull all sorts of shifty questions and directions to get your agreement, and thus you're now subservient to their domain. But let's first take a look at the rule of 3. Most of our lives are spent with the rule of 3 and don't give it a second thought. So let's start at the beginning and move up towards the courts themselves, because I think it's important we get a historical perspective, because that will allow you more confidence. The rule of 3, also known as the threefold law or law of return, is or was a religious and spiritual tenet held by some Wiccans, neo-pagans and occultists. It states that whatever energy a person puts out into the world, be it positive or negative, will be returned to that person 3 times. There are, of course, opposing schools of thought here, with some saying that this is to allow a new initiate to consider their intentions before it's too late, and others say it's absolute rubbish. But irrespective of the origins of the number 3, it is said to be a powerful magic number. Now, I know to mention the idea of magic in an episode which will go on and discuss the law is somewhat at odds with each other, but however, consider the age and the lineage of the actors in these dead courts, the black robes and the pomp and circumstance of the wigs, and the mists of time where these all derive from. These people are in fancy dress, and the only reason one would take these actors seriously is not because of any faith in a judicial system, but in the fear of the consequences if we do not follow their commands. It's strange because I had a conversation the other day about the fact that all laws are based on compliance through the threat of violence, not agreement. From a simple non-payment of any particular claim, be that a parking fine or council tax, the law at its most basic intent will deliver you via kidnap, violence, incarcerate you. Violence in the form of dragging you from your home, violence as crazy as it sounds, is now used as an excuse to keep the peace. I mean, let's be honest, what a crazy world we're living in. Even the act of war is sold to the masses as fighting for peace and liberty, which is probably the greatest oxymoron in the history of the world. Even the church, in all its vexatious morality, has been the perpetrator of more deaths since the earliest times in history than almost anything else. Bringing God to the Americas resulted in millions of deaths. The Crusades of old again displays the crazy notion of peace through the word of God. Well, if that be true, then God is the most violent being ever known to mankind. But I'm not here to argue the morality of religion, since, well, basically it has none. I am simply pointing out the deficiencies in our accepted thinking, which promotes a disconnect between morality and common sense, which seems is not all that common. Now back to the rule of three, and yes, the number 33 is probably high on your mind already. And so I suspect are the threes, along with the questionable quote I often see floating around the net by Tesla stating the frequencies 3, 6, 9 are all derivatives of 3, and they make you allow you to understand the universe. We have the 3 strikes and you're out, the 3 gavel hits from an auctioneer's podium to signify the sale or contract is now agreed. And even the best-selling author and communications advisor, Carmine Gallo, poses the question that Thomas Jefferson, or he makes the statement that Thomas Jefferson was the 3rd president of the United States. Jefferson, as many of you obviously know, was the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. And he was also strongly against the Bank of America, saying that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, but I digress. Question here is, why did Jefferson choose 3 rights instead of 12, 13, 14? Well, the author Gallo explains that the reason is the rule of 3. Humans only have so much space in short-term memory. This is the same reason, for instance, authorities like the TSA and military branches understand that disseminating information in groups of 3 is more easily processed and thus easier to follow. And groups of 3, if you notice, in some of the greatest speeches in the world have been used because they emphasize a point 3 times in slightly different variations to drive a point home. But hence why the TSA provides 3 simple steps to security: show ID and boarding pass, take out liquids and laptops, take off shoes and jackets. And it's also why the military teaches 3 rules of surviving captivity: fellowship with other prisoners, survive, and return with honor. So why, and another point of this is like, why do we have 3 wishes in most fairy tale stories? 3 is the number of time, past, present, future, birth, life, death, beginning, middle, end. And 3 is the number, I'm sure you all know, of the divine, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And we even say 3rd time lucky. I could go on, but you get the point. But I do want you to remember that for centuries it has been classed as a major magic number. So let's get back to the courtroom. Before anything happens, the court has to establish jurisdiction over you. Now, whether that be a simple sit down, Mr. Smith, or verifying your name, or any other covert command which places you under their control. The thing is, if you can avoid all of these attempts, then you're doing very well in order to stand your ground. Now, please don't take this the wrong way, but do not use the phrase, "I am a free man on the land" approach. You will get, in most instances, shut down very quickly, since you have not even established your standing nor questioned the jurisdiction of the court. But it goes much deeper than this. If you can stand your ground by asking questions rather than making statements, you maintain control. In a moment, I'll give you an example from my upcoming book on council tax, and it's a great example of standing your ground. The original script I took from an old case, which in this instance worked for the man in question, but you need to understand that you may not be as confident or as knowledgeable, so bear that in mind until you are fully comfortable in dealing with this situation. Now, when I say that you may not be as confident as knowledgeable, by the end of this episode, I hope you are definitely knowledgeable, and you can only gain confidence if you try. And my thought behind this whole episode, based on the number 3, as you will find out if you listen to the end, is you will have so much confidence when standing in the courtroom because you know, or you will know, exactly what is going on. The moment you stand and claim you are a living man and an agent representative for the all caps name, you know as well as I do, the judge will attempt to bully you into submission in as many ways as they can muster. You must stand your ground and demand remedy. If the judge does not give you remedy, it is he who is in dishonour. So keep at him before you even start asking or replying questions about the claim itself. You stand on them not having jurisdiction, and you in no way are going to give it to them. Remedy is required, whatever that may be, and you demand it by saying, "I move the court for remedy," not actually shouting, "I demand something or other." But you must have already established your standing and stick to it. You are a living, breathing man or woman and have the right to face your accuser, not a representative of some fictional corporation. Now, as I said, I'm going to read you the short script, which you will find in my council tax book when it comes out, and it goes as follows. But before I do, please excuse my voiceover to differentiate the characters, and we're going to start with the judge. So, can we first find out who is in the court? Is Mr. Smith in the court? Sir, I am the third-party representative for Mr. Smith. Are you Mr. Smith? No, sir. I am the third-party representative for Mr. Smith. You may address me as Cecil. I will not address you as Cecil. I will call you Mr. Smith. Sir, I am not Mr. Smith. The court is required to address me as I request, and I request that you address me as Cecil. Now, just as a side note, folks, court protocol will dictate that a defendant or respondent can be addressed any way they choose. So from that point onwards in this particular script, the judge then referred to the person in question as the gentleman, but avoided referring to them as Mr. Smith. So we're back to the judge. If you are not Mr. Smith, then I take note that Mr. Smith is not represented in court. Well, in that case, sir, you will have to also take note that the counsel is not represented in court. Now, again, as a side note, folks, this would mean that the case would have to be dismissed, finding for the defendant because the plaintiff hasn't bothered to turn up. I can see that the counsel has representation in court. Then you will have to acknowledge that Mr. Smith also has representation in court. Are we all not equal in the eyes of the law, sir? And if the counsel has third-party representation, then so does Mr. Smith. The counsel is a corporation, and so is Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is not a corporation. Yes, he is. No, it isn't. It's a person. A person is a corporation. No, it isn't. Define person. I don't have to. Then let me do it for you, sir. A person is a corporation, and if you'd care to check Black's Law Dictionary as defined in law, you will see it as plain as day. But let me ask you another question, sir. Are you familiar with the Seteke Act of 1666? I am familiar with many laws, sir. I asked if you are familiar with the Seteke Act of 1666. If you are not, sir, then with respect, you are not competent to judge in this matter, and that gives rise to a claim of denial of due process. Are you denying me due process? Let's hear from the counsel. Sir, we can only move on to the counsel's presentation and representation when the court has confirmed that Mr. Smith is also allowed to be represented in court. Fine. Now, I do go into detail of why that script and position that Mr. Smith took, or should I say the representative of Mr. Smith, is so important, and the mention of the Seta KV Act 1666 was used in that example, but I'm not going to digress here, but you can read that in the ebook when it comes out. But for now, let's focus on the rule of three where we were. So that's just one example of standing your ground, and it is obviously one of many ways, but you can grasp the importance of having the judge tied up legally and lawfully, throwing due process at him if he does not allow both sides to be represented. Okay, so I'm digressing a little, but you might want to keep that approach in your back pocket and learn it well. But let's get back to the court. So, you've established your standing and the judge gets up and leaves the bench, because they will leave the bench 3 times. This is where the number 3 comes in. Now, many have seen this happen. Now, some may think that this is a very quick win. I made him leave the bench. Okay, no, it is not. It is a ploy by the system, and the system uses it to trick you into further agreement when the judge returns. And be under no illusion, he most certainly will. But this time without you knowing that the rules have actually changed. In fact, not only the rules have changed, but so has the venue, even though you haven't actually moved anywhere physically. You see, the first round is done on the rules of the Bar Society. I'll come back to that later. The rules of the Bar Society, nothing more. They are rules which you, not being a member of the bar, do not apply to if you stand your ground. So strike 1 is the rules of the bar and you standing there demanding remedy. The first instance, prior to the judge leaving the bench, is the fact that the court is, as I've just said, administrative bar rules, and although the change is subtle, it is nonetheless a change of venue. When you ask to move the court for remedy, you do so in an admin bar court, pure and simple. And remedy is a word we are all familiar with and know what we mean, and so do the courts, but only in the first instance where bar rules are applicable. When the judge returns, he returns under full Admiralty Law. He may even have changed his shoes or trousers, but you won't know because of that large lump of driftwood sitting in front of him they call a bench. Now he can start the whole process over again, and you need to stand your ground once more, but in standing your ground also, your words have to change. You see, previously you asked for remedy, but now you are at sea in Admiralty Law, or you are on a ship. There are only 2 outcomes under Admiralty Law. Either you get treated as salvage, in other words you're dead, in which case salvage is obviously not alive and can be placed in the hold of the ship. In this case that would be prison for storage, should you not maintain your standing. The other outcome is that you are a sailor or a mariner, and under the laws of commerce at sea, you replace the word remedy, this is when he comes out again, with the phrase cure and maintenance. Let me say that again. You replace remedy, that's remedy is round 1. When he comes back, you're going to use the phrase cure and maintenance. This goes all the way back to Roman laws and the laws of what we call oleron, updated to the laws of modern commerce, especially in these situations. But if we dig deeper into history, we find that Rhodian laws, now I don't know whether any of you have heard of oleron or Rhodian laws, but these were the basis of today's Admiralty laws. And for that, let's just pop over to this link so I can actually show you what I'm talking about. And as usual, I'll leave all the links I use in this particular episode in the description below. But for the moment, let's have a look at this. So, the historical position of the Rhodian law. The Rhodian maritime law has been spoken of by many legal writers. I quote as example the words of Park in the introduction of his work on marine insurance as follows. The Rhodians were the first legislators of the sea and promulgated the system of marine jurisprudence to which even the Romans themselves paid the greatest deference and respect, and which they adopted as a guide of their own conduct in naval affairs. The time at which these laws were compiled is not precisely ascertained, but we may reasonably suppose it was about the time when the Rhodians first obtained the sovereignty of the seas, which was 916 years before the era of Christianity. Now this is just another area of, as many of you probably already know, is the Phoenicians as well. All right. Now, this goes on for quite some time, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is actually in the Yale Law Journal. And as I said, I will keep the descriptions in the description below for the links. Now, all I'm just showing you here is when I mention something new to you, like Rhodian law, then obviously for those of you who have been with my channel long enough, I do like to back it up with the facts. So let's get back to the episode. You now know where the I wouldn't say the genesis of Admiralty law is, because it's still in question, but now you know about Rhodian law. Now, apart from the Rhodian laws, which, as I say, were the basis of what the Romans actually started to take on board, those laws were later codified further on down in through history with another set of laws or documents which was called the Oleron Laws. Now, Oleron updated those laws, as I said earlier, in modern commerce. So let me just pop over to show you again another link that describes the documents as far as Oleron is concerned, and the further move into modern history, where we find ourselves today in what we call Admiralty laws or maritime laws or mercantile laws, the laws of the sea. You get what I mean. Let's have a look at this link. So here we are at the website admiraltylawguide.com and the rules of Oleron circa 1266. Now they go through a whole list of articles which I'm not going to run through every single one, but these actually form the basis of maritime or admiralty laws as you and I know them today, and also what's going on in the background. So these laws, or at least the genesis of these laws, which now form the modern day Admiralty laws, the rules of Oleron. Now the reason it was actually called the rules of Oleron, because it was which is where they were written. I'll show you that in a second. Oleron is a little island off the coast of France, I believe, which is why they're called the rules of Oleron. And it talks about all of the shipping laws. When several joint owners make a man and master of a ship or vessel, and the ship or vessel departing from her own port arrives in Bordeaux, as you can see, which is why they're referring to France, they might freight us. I'm not going to go through all of this. I just wanted to show you that when I mention the laws, or sorry, the rules of Oleron, this gives you a little bit of background on exactly where our maritime laws have come from and what the judge is now doing when they return. Now, when they return, as I've already stated, using these types of articles under maritime law, what they're actually doing is invoking you as I said, either salvage or sailor. Salvage, dead, sailor, alive, or mariner, take your pick. And the reason that you use cure and maintenance, well, let's get onto that and I'll show you in a second. Now, obviously, if the judge comes back in, this will be the second time, and then you all of a sudden come out with, I think the correct phrase is maintenance and cure rather than cure and maintenance. And I'm not sure whether they're interchangeable or not, but you'll see in a little while when I show you some very high court rulings on this particular matter. But I just imagine, take a look at the judge's face when you switch language to match his underhanded switch on you. And just to drive this aspect home, let me show you a few of the cases which comes from maintenance and cure and lets you know that you are firmly in Admiralty law. Let's just take a look at this. So here we are on admiraltylawguide.com. Again, I'll leave a link in the description below, but you can see here, which is why I corrected myself, guys, because it's maintenance and cure rather than cure and maintenance. So my apologies for getting it the wrong way round. But maintenance and cure, and these are Circuit Court Admiralty cases. Hall versus Noble Drilling. I'm not going to go into the cases here, but you can, as I say, I'm going to leave links in the description below, and you can do it for yourself. But you can see that they are taken very seriously, and not only that, look how recent they are. 2001, 2002, so 1999. So these are not ancient laws of Oleron and Rhodion that we've been talking about. These have been brought right through from the Justinian deception, the Roman laws, the Phoenicians, and they are still relevant today. So when that judge comes back into the room under Admiralty and Maritime Law Guide, then this is why you drop the word remedy, which is bar association rules. And as I said, I will discuss bar with you in a little while. But you're now under Admiralty and Maritime Guide, which means then the remedy would be maintenance and cure. Jones Act, maintenance and cure, where a seaman is required to provide employment medical information or whatever. Okay, so remember, you're either salvage or sailor, dead or alive, and you require maintenance and cure. And as I said, watch the face of the judge when you finish your "I am a living, breathing flesh and blood man, and I demand maintenance and cure," or "I move the court for maintenance and cure in this venue." You're letting the judge know that you know what he's just tried to pull on you. All right, so let's get back to the episode. Now, I know at this stage some might be thinking that I'm digressing a little bit from the 3-strike rule, but I am not. And it is imperative that you fully comprehend why you can and should stand your ground. And without the historical perspectives that I'm showing you, you risk being railroaded instead of being steadfast, knowing why you are doing what you are doing, rather than just repeating mine or anyone else's suggestion, because you've got to understand that, remember, knowledge brings you power in many different forms. So you now probably know more than the judge sitting in front of you, but I suspect not. And he is not the master of your ship. You are a sailor or mariner. If he wants to deal with, if you want to deal with him, should I say, then in that way you still require maintenance and cure as a living man and not as dead salvage. All the judge is doing is trying to establish superior jurisdiction over you, should I say, by starting off at level 1, which is bar association rules, going away, changing the venue because he's now under Maritime Admiralty Laws, which is more powerful than bar rules. Now, think about it. If the second jurisdiction is superior to the first, in other words, they're turning up the heat, then should it not follow in many respects that maximum cure or maintenance in this venue is more powerful than remedy in the bar venue? So what exactly do we mean by maintenance and cure? Well, as I say, it's the Admiralty version of remedy. But until you're seen as fully recovered from illness, in this case the bullshit the system is placing upon you. So consider the claim you are there for, and if the judge does not leave, he has to grant you, if he doesn't leave the court, he has to grant you maintenance and cure. And I'll leave you to figure out what type of life maintenance you would seek and try to think outside the box for your cure. Now, what if the judge leaves a third and final time? Rule of 3. Strike 3. Well, see if you can guess the role he now takes on without telling you. To reiterate, we've obviously had the bar member first, then we've had the captain of the ship second, and the third, go on, have a guess. I'll wait for a second. The third occasion he returns as, did you get it? A high priest. And I do hope some of you got that. He walks in under the protection of Baal, or Baal, and the protection of canon law or ecclesiastical laws. He may not know he is supporting Baal, but I suspect he does, since this forms part of the Masonic rituals of which I'm sure most judges in those positions fully stand under and understand. So now you're in front of a pseudo-pope. This is the position of strike 3 and the judge's final effort at getting you to stand under Baal and the church. The literal translation of Baal by many scholars is the word Lord our Father, or owner of dominion, hence the link with the ecclesiastical and the Pope himself. Amongst Baal's title were Rider of the Clouds, Almighty, and Lord of the Earth. He was the god of both fertility and the thunderstorm, as well as a mighty warrior, sometimes a sun god and the protector of crops and livestock. I'll leave a link in the description below for all you that want to search the background on Baal, and of course the other links I've used for you to dig deeper if you wish. So we are now on our third strike in court. We've gone all the way back to a high priest or pope of Baal. It is at this stage that it is their last chance to trap you into submission. And a mistake at this level of power could see the judge removed from office, so you might want to do some homework on a writ of quo warranto, but that's for another episode. Let's continue with the high priest position you now find yourself in front of. At this level, and the fact you are now dealing with a representative of the Pope or the high office within the Temple of Baal, it is at this point you invoke the living being and your sovereignty under God himself and no other, especially man. One of the things judges at this stage will do is grant you your required solution. And why? Well, it's simple. Because if they dishonour their position of priests of Baal at this stage, well, you can remind them of what it says in their own literature on this matter. And as I quote a quote from the Bible, the law curses all who practice it and fail to do it perfectly. That's Galatians chapter 3, verse 10. The law curses all those who practice it and fail to do it. Let me be clear here. A curse in our world, when getting a spell from one of these mystics, a judge, is a sentence or a sacrament or a sacrifice to Baal. If they do not get that sacrifice, it is they who are cursed, not you. Now, for many of you, you may understand where I feel some of the misinformation has filtered down into the world of remedy, and many are standing their ground in a bar venue claiming sovereignty when they should be demanding remedy as a living man, and leave out the true meaning of sovereignty at this level until it's required. Words mean everything, especially in courts, and you would do well to avoid using the wrong ones at the wrong time, and I now hope you know why. It seems over the years many have got these mixed up, and many have never even heard of maintenance and cure. But rest assured, your adversary is not the prosecution. It is the ever-changing face and venue created by the judge. As crazy as it sounds, we speak of maintaining honour, as do the practitioners of magic. Judges and bar members are students and masters in a school of magicians and have full knowledge of how to use words in casting spells which affect your standing and your chance of winning. It is not without years of practice and dedication these magicians learn their trade, and the honour we think we are referring to is not the same type of honour they are scared of dishonouring. If they dishonour the craft by not casting the correct spell or getting the result, it does not bode well for them within these circles. Which is why at this third level, strike 3, or at the last time the judge returns to the court, he is duty bound to try his best to catch you, or has to give his power away in the form of your claim as a sovereign being which usurps his authority. This is the correct venue to invoke universal law, the law of God, and his gift to you as having dominion over the earth, and which you stand under no man's laws. Just don't do it in the wrong venue. It's a bit like one master of light, that would be you, that would beating the hell out of the purveyor of darkness. While we think this is a courtroom, and for 90% of the time it is seen as such, it is in fact within their world a series of levels or tasks within the mystery schools they must follow and show skill in, and face the consequences of their peers in their temple. You might want to read my ebook Spellcasting in a Modern World to get a deeper understanding or overstanding of what casting a spell really means. The word bar means a veiled priest, a father in Hebrew. In other words, a priest which on the surface doesn't look like a priest. If you go deeper into the roots of the word bar, or bar in Hebrew, when used together, means a practitioner of something, in this case the mystery schools and the casting of spells. Or they may be straightforward and practitioners of canon law and the law of Baal. Have you ever wondered where the word barbarians come from? That's got bar. Again, you see the use of bar in the word itself. And although it came later to mean uncivilized, it started life as a race or group of people who did not speak the main language of the day. In historical context, that's either Greek, Roman or Latin. So bar, or barbarians, members who cannot be understood by normal English-speaking people who use barbaric language known as legalese. Again, you got that bar, as in barbaric or barbarian. So barbarian who is barbaric is a practitioner of Baal. A lot of B's there, I know, who speaks a different language. And I bet you thought you were simply walking into a courtroom. Be under no illusion, courts, as we know, are actually temples. They are not just places of worship for the high priest, with you as a sacrificial victim, but they enforce through spell casting in a barbaric language in order to exact a pound of flesh in more ways than one. So, now you have a better understanding of not just what you are dealing with, but who you are dealing with, and you must adapt yourself to the changing venue as they switch roles and ramp up these spells. You, in return, have to stand your ground, change your language, and affect the result you are seeking by overstanding the game that is being played out in the Temple of Baal. I hope you've enjoyed this journey into the courtroom history and the bait and switch they pull on all of us, and have gained a little more knowledge to give you the confidence and the ability to stand your ground. And I know many are waiting for my council tax ebook, but in the meantime, consider supporting my work any way you can, and maybe, if not already done so, purchase my previous ebooks or the Master Digital Debt Busting course, which will gain you access to the private Telegram group with files and members who have become very skilled at dealing with all types of claims. And remember the old saying, judge lest ye not be judged. And that is the fear of the high priests of the temples we all call courts. Remember what I said, the law curses all those who practice it and fail to do it perfectly. Let me finish on reminding you that there are two main factors at play in any court with a sitting judge. The first is you being able to stand your ground, and the second is what the judge is doing when he leaves and returns. And just a suggestion, but don't get into arguments about your laws do not apply to me, but they do, but not in the way you have previously imagined. If you state statutes, acts and legislations do not apply to a living man, you are poking the beast. Try not to use those words. Instead, stand your ground knowing full well what the judge is up to and call him out on jurisdiction by switching your gameplay as he switches his. So, now you know what they know, and I hope this explanation has given you a little more to incite you to hold your position, gain confidence, and get a little bit more knowledge. So until next time, question everything, believe nothing, and stay curious, and I'll see you on deck very soon.